Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Upon Further Review. And today we are going to go over the 2020 election results. Finally, what a heck of a week. It took until Saturday, so it was really election week to some extent. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have finally been announced as president and vice president-elect. They captured Pennsylvania, which looked like it was going to go for Donald Trump. And when all is said and all is done, it looks like they're going to completely flip Georgia as they're ahead. I don't think technically it's been called yet, but it doesn't matter. Joe Biden has gotten over 270 electoral votes. Arizona and Nevada, Joe Biden is ahead. As the votes are being tallied, they're a bit narrower. Really, it's going to be a tight election, but when all is done, it looks like Biden will capture, ironically, the same number of electoral votes that Trump did in 2016. It's been a reversal. And I got to say, it's a bit of a shocker for me. Election night, I looked and I said, wow, I was taken aback by the sheer amount of support that Donald Trump got. In the wake of everything lining up against him, in the wake of the George Floyd and the anti-racism movement, the rise of Black Lives Matter this year, and everything that has just been a hell of a 2020. COVID-19, the pandemic, the lockdowns, the protests. I thought to myself, there's no way Donald Trump is going to win re-election. But he had a strong election day. But we've had the highest voter turnout in modern history, if not American history. Joe Biden, as a popular vote, though that's not what elects the president, he has the most votes in the history of America for a presidential race. But that being said, Donald Trump had the second most. To put that in perspective, if this was 2016 or 2008, with these votes, Donald Trump would have beaten Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. I never thought he would get to 70 million votes, but Joe Biden's closing in on 75 million by the time these ballots get counted. And I know a lot of Trump supporters and conservative Republicans out there feel a little jaded. They feel a little weird about this election, but this was an unusual election for an unusual year. We never had this many mail-in ballots before. So as a result, more people have voted before because it was made easier. That access was made easier. And we had mail-in ballots come in. I know on election night, Pennsylvania as a whole had 1.4 million mail-in ballots to count. And what did not help is that some states like Pennsylvania, by state law, they were not allowed to even begin counting these ballots until the election is over. I know one thing's for certain in the future. I really hope that these states are allowed to count ballots as they come in, and whether or not they show them in the head or of time, or they wait until after the polls close to reveal those numbers, that's a different story. But they definitely should start counting so we don't have to wait a week almost to get some results. But at the end of the day, Joe Biden has won, and Donald Trump has not conceded yet. Even though with him having lost Pennsylvania, he has no path to 270. Even if he won the rest of the states outstanding, he would have less than 270. I think it would be like he'd be a state away from winning. And Joe Biden would be at 273. Trump would only be able to get to about 260 and some change. You need 270 to be elected president, but he has not yet conceded. In fact, he has come out and he has stated that this election is being stolen from him. He has discussed fraud. He has discussed legal and illegal votes, and he's presented absolutely no evidence for his claims. He's just basically failing. It's nonsense. He's saying there are illegal votes, but won't define what those are. Is he talking about made-up people? Is he talking about people illegal, or what is he won't say. And the reality is this: the election, and all these mail-in ballots included, in every room in which they're counting votes, there are Democrats and Republicans. And I'm not even talking about poll watchers. I'm talking about the actual election officials that tally these ballots and tally these votes. There are people from both parties and neutral observers that watches this. And that's not just for this election. That's every election, all of them. There are people on both sides. He is falling behind in Georgia, in which they have Republican Secretary of State, Republican governor, and the entire state government as a whole is ran by Republicans. And he believes he's being cheated. And he is absolutely refusing to accept the fact that he has lost a duly, legally, properly carried out election. And it's a scary thing. He's rejecting the very basic norms of democracy when it's clear Joe Biden won. And I'll be honest, Mike, networks were being very careful, very cautious. I know CNN didn't even show states like Arizona, which the Associated Press did call. They didn't show any. I think they still haven't called that yet. And they were very careful about awarding and making premature projections. Once Biden pulled ahead in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and that happened about a day or two ago, I thought it was over. But they still waited, and they waited finally until Saturday, where Pennsylvania was officially called with 99% of the vote in, and Joe Biden's ahead, and that's enough to get him over 270. And Donald Trump still refuses to accept it. He's launched a bunch of frivolous legal battles, and at some point, somebody's going to have to tell him he lost, and he refuses to accept it. And this is dangerous for the transfer of power. This is not the first time an incumbent president's lost, and this is not the first time the White House had to be handed over between parties. But when Donald Trump won, Barack Obama called him and began the process of transitioning peacefully power. He invited him to the White House, and Obama was there on Inauguration Day. He did his job as a president and passed on that mantle of leadership onto the next one. Hillary Clinton called and conceded to him. And yet here, Mike, we face the reality that Joe Biden won this election, and Donald Trump might not yet concede, and he's going to launch a series of frivolous legal battles. I don't know where that brings us, but this is where we are.
It's pretty sad when the president of the United States, the current president of the United States, has the attitude of a child when it comes to winning and losing. Before the election even happened, he said, quote, out of his mouth, "The only way I lose is if the election was stolen from me." He has been laying down the railroad tracks to lead to a fraudulent ballots way before this election even started. He has sowed the seed into the minds of his supporters that if he loses, it's because it was fraud. It's because the Democrats conspired against him, and somehow they conspired against him in such a way where they were able to win the election, but still not win control of the Senate. That it still allowed Mitch McConnell to stay retain his power. You would think if there was such collusion and such a master plan at work, that Mitch McConnell would not be allowed to remain and win his race, but he won resoundingly. So you see that it's a house of lies he's built. It's sad because his supporters have ran inside of this house, and they're going to stay there. They're going to. I can see going forward that the common rally cry is going to be that Biden is not the real president. And that's going to continue to cause further division because, like you said, he's not conceding. He's not doing what a president should do when they lose a race, concede, and start plans for transition of power. He is doubling down on his assertion that there was some kind of mass voter fraud going on when there is zero proof of that. So what you'll see is this house of cards that he has built of lies, built on the lie of voter fraud, where his supporters have filed in and they're holding down the hatches as he files all these frivolous lawsuits, begins litigation against all these electorates across these various states that he lost. And of course, there's only fraud in the states that he lost. There's no fraud going on in the states that he won. So you see him building the narrative that this election was stolen from him. He's feeding the narrative to his base. And like I said, I think going forward, you're going to see that his base is not going to recognize Biden as their president. You're going to probably see, a lot of lies. I mean, a lot of lies coming out, and a lot of a big narrative coming out from his base saying that Biden's not the real president, is a liar in chief, blah blah blah. Insert what you will here, and them still recognizing Donald Trump as president. And even though that's not going to sway any administrative power, it continues to divide in America. It continues. It's going to continue to drive a wedge between the rest of the country. You're going to see that his supporters are really doubling down on Trump still being somehow in power, even though Biden is president-elect and he will be the next president. You're going to see them still try to recognize Trump as president, even though he'll, have no administrative power to do anything. But he's going to continue his narrative that this election was stolen from throughout Biden's presidency. And people close to him have already announced that if he does, so fact, lose this election, he'll run again in 2024. So that goes to show you his mind state of he's not going away. And so President Trump is going to be somebody that we all have to deal with for the next 4 to 5 years. Him still being in the limelight. And part of the problem why he is such a problem is that the media eats up every single thing he does. The more outlandish he is, the more media coverage he gets. And the more media coverage he gets, the more to the forefront he's brought to everybody's minds and attention. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy almost at that point. Everybody, including the media, wants him to shut up, but they can't stop covering us. And at this point, unfortunately, going forward, where it should be a time for people celebrating, people making this transition to power, like you said, is going to be full of contention and hostilities. And I can only see the divide growing further between us.
On balance, I'm going to try to figure out here, or just at least discuss, when exactly did the divide really begin? I remember a lot of conservatives that I knew and worked with, used to say Barack Obama was divisive, and I never really understood it. Exactly what is it that you're talking about? If you're insinuating the fact that this man has different politics than you, that's just not divisive. People have different politics. Because I personally find Barack Obama, I think most people will, is a man of class, honor, dignity, integrity. Was everything perfect? Was everything flawless? Did this, that, and the third? Absolutely not, of course, but that's the case with every president. But the man did his job. He did it with dignity, grace, and class. And when he had to hand it over to Donald Trump, he did that job as a president as well, welcomed him into the White House, helped him transition. That being said, to play a little devil's advocate, I know that there are a lot of conservatives who one of their rallying cries was Donald Trump was not accepted as a president, not my president. We used to hear people say, but I can also say people used to say the same thing about Barack Obama when he clearly won in an overwhelming way. When Donald Trump was president-elect, and even in his campaign, we know that he was spied on by the government because of the possibility of some sort of connection to Russia. I told people at the time that if there was a real connection to Russia, that the FBI, CIA, and everybody's looking into, if there was a real connection to Russia, then Barack Obama's not going to allow this, right? He still had control of the government for months before Inauguration Day. There's no way that he's going to allow a Russian plant, if they have hard, stone cold evidence. And the reality is, once Donald Trump took over, people began talking about impeachment and looking for a reason why. People made the Russian connection. This is just Putin and Russian interference, and that's the only reason it won. The people kept bringing up the popular vote, which I understand the sentiment, but that is simply not how we elect the president. And they fought and fought and fought his entire presidency really to the end. I mean, the idea of the impeachment trial, went on this year. Beginning of this year, it seems like it was a million years ago, but in 4 years, it's been investigation after investigation, impeachment after impeachment. And I told people then, and that's exactly what happened, they're not going to find a Russian connection. What they're going to find is white-collar crime. They're going to lock people up for, banking fraud and tax evasion, get a couple of people on perjury traps, lying to Congress and things of that nature. People are going to cut deals, and people are going to end up getting slaps on the wrist like, 2 years in prison. And he's probably going to start pardoning people anyways. And they feel as though that, because I know some people who are bitter, and they feel as though that fight that was put up against Trump, they denied him the ability to govern effectively, cast a cloud of suspicion on his entire presidency and his legitimacy as a duly elected president. And I feel a lot of them are going to be very bitter and try to do the exact same thing to Joe Biden. They're going to cast doubt on the mail-in ballots. They're going to cast doubt everywhere, no matter how legitimate it actually is. This is how they feel. They have that same partisan anger in their heart, and they want revenge. And one thing I will say that impressed me about Biden is he talked about a party to come together. His mandate, and I was worried about this because I feel as though a lot of people voted for Joe Biden because they were voting against Donald Trump. The third party vote fell significantly this election. And I know a lot of people think the third parties cost Hillary Clinton. They did not. And the reason is that the proof is in the pudding. The Libertarians, Gary Johnson ran in 2016. He got like 4.5 million votes. And the Green Party did get about 1.5 million votes. And there are states like Pennsylvania where Hillary Clinton lost by 40,000 votes. And here's Jill Stein with almost 50,000 votes. And people say, look, if those people just voted for Hillary, but what they're overlooking is in those very same states, Gary Johnson had like 150,000 voters. This election, with the stakes so high, in the direction of our country, we're going left or right, and dealing with the fact that Donald Trump, no matter what we're talking about politics, has proven himself to be a very indecent man, a rude and crude man that lacks class, lacks dignity, lacks shame, and can't even get through a simple sentence without embarrassing himself. But the reality is people felt the weight and gravity of this election, and as a result, very few people bothered with the third party. And they voted en masse for both Republicans. And I think that's why Donald Trump's numbers shot up. I think some of those libertarians who did not support him the first time, but they really, really are terrified of the idea of liberal politics, they supported him anyways. They supported him in spite of everything that he is, because they supported the politics or something deeper, something so more sinister. I'm not going to dare try to read the minds of people. I know for a fact there are people that deeply care about conservative politics and Republican politics, and they don't care that Donald Trump may very well be a racist. They don't care that he's incendiary. They don't care that he uses divisive language. To them, they see it as a response to the way he was treated. That's the way they'll see it. I'm not here to argue the validity of the point. I'm here to simply offer the insight into that's how they feel, because I've heard it from their mouths. I've seen them post and talk about it on social media. If we do not get past this as a country, where does that lead us in the long term politically? If every time the opponent wins is illegitimate, and every time the opponent wins, it must be questioned, fought tooth and nail, and we must be obstructionist. Mitch McConnell obstructed as much as he could about Barack Obama. And for the very same people, and while I'm being fair to, at least trying to, Donald Trump, I've been hard on Joe Biden. Our very first podcast, Mike, was talking about some of the ridiculous flubs that I remember we went to record that day, and that was the day he made the comments. It can't be taken for granted. But the reality is people were afraid of Donald Trump, and they despised Donald Trump, and they wanted to see Donald Trump out, so they voted for Joe Biden. So will Joe Biden bang his chest and say, hey, look, I got the 75 million votes, therefore I have a mandate to do what I see fit? No, he didn't. I really appreciated the fact that he talked about bringing the country together and closing the gap and divide. We have to do that politically to function as a nation, to function and be successful as a nation. We cannot try to torpedo the other side when we only have two major political parties. And the reality is they're running and controlling power from the local all the way up to the federal. How do we come together? I remember when Barack Obama won, and talking with conservatives, and they literally looked me in the face day one and said, I hope he fails. That happened in 2008. Before anything happened, he won in a landslide. Whether you believed in his politics or not, whether you believed in the idea of hope or change or not, there were people who said, I hope he fails. We know for a fact Republicans met and said, we're going to do our best to make him a one-term president. And they put politics and party over the country. The decency of men like John McCain and even Mitt Romney, which is evident in their concession speeches and the things they had to say. Go back and look at the 2008 concession speech from John McCain, who, by the way, Donald Trump openly attacked and mocked. He mocked him for being a war hero. He mocked him for being captured. He mocked him as if he failed somehow serving the country and was captured. And they were so against odds at one another that he was not even invited to John McCain's funeral. In death, he wanted to have nothing to do with this man. And I believe it cost him Arizona. Arizona went Republican in 2016, but Not only was John McCain against him, but the McCain family campaigned on behalf of Joe Biden. Cindy McCain was going around cutting ads and making appearances on behalf of Joe Biden. That's a very unique situation that resulted in Democrats winning this election. I don't think that will happen again. So people have to be very, very careful about this idea there won't be a Republican president and things of that nature, because so many things went into the pandemic, the movement as a whole, and the pressure that will be on Democrats to deliver, especially from the further left-leaning and liberal members of the Democratic Party, because so many people have tuned in and believed in Joe Biden that if they don't get the result they want, I worry what they'll vote in 4 years. Donald Trump, if Donald Trump's back, they'll come back and stand against Donald Trump. But what if there isn't? What if there's someone who is more eloquent, someone who is not as divisive, someone who can put their words into action and make a legitimate case and plan instead of just telling you that everyone who disagrees with them and everyone who doesn't show them a positive light is simply fake or bad or lie. But where do we go as a country if we cannot find that to get back to working and functioning as a government, making compromises with one another? The idea that if we don't compromise, we will win politically, but the nation loses. I think Joe Biden, based on his words, and we will obviously have to wait and see his actions. It'll be January when he gets elected, and we'll see how they govern. And we know that the popular vote went this way. We know 75 million people chose his style of governance and believed in them over the other. But if we cannot get past this polarization, then the country has no chance at a future, no chance at success. They keep pointing at each side who drew first blood, who wounded who. But if we do not get adults in the room and put it behind us, an eye for an eye will leave the world blind.
So I want to go back to one thing you said. It's like, when did this all start? This started before Donald Trump even announced he was going to run for president. This divisiveness. To me, it started in particular for him. And you're saying that people were saying, not my president, and this, that, and the third when he first elected, because he was so ferocious in his attack of Barack Obama and this whole birther conspiracy, that the fact that a sitting president had to actually produce his long form birth certificate as a result of a celebrity, a TV star at this point, because he's a failed businessman, just going out and spreading and pounding the pavement about this conspiracy that he was not a U.S. citizen, that really started it. When he was so fervent in his attacks on Barack Obama for no reason, really started with people. When he ran, he already left a bad taste in a lot of people, millions of people's mouths with that. So he already walked, first day on the campaign trail, already had a lot of people that did not like him, did not like his character, did not like what he stood for. I don't think anybody could have foreseen how divisive he would be once he actually got into power. But it started off there that I think a lot of people were already predisposed to him, as president. But like you said, going forward and watching Biden's acceptance speech, he did say a lot of things about uniting the country, bringing both parties together. And to be honest, a lot of that has to do with Congress. Congress is so divisive right now that it's hard to foresee them just saying, okay, let's get together and do what's best. I know one of Biden's strong qualities is that he is a compromiser, and he will compromise to push legislation through. But I really don't see this Congress coming together. It feel like that this is the most divisive I've ever seen it. I feel like it's now a cat and mouse game. I'm actually interested to see whether or not Democrats will actually try to stack the Supreme Court, which I don't think they can do now. But we'll see what happens with this special runoff in Georgia. But it's interesting to see going forward what the temperament of Congress will be. And I think that will actually set the tone for this upcoming administration. Are parties on both sides willing to come together in Congress and actually push out, meaningful legislation to help the American people? I mean, right now, You look at Congress, then they're holding up the additional stimulus for COVID-19. They're holding up that as a political move. Where there's still businesses and families in desperate need of some kind of relief and help. It's still politics right now, and you can see that even in this unprecedented time of a pandemic, and they're still willing to play politics with people's lives. Yeah, that kind of tells me where everything is at right now. It's going to be interesting to see. I think Biden, like you said, we both have been critical of him in the past. I still think far and beyond he was the best candidate between him and Donald Trump. I'm really hopeful that he will actually push some meaningful changes. I know that I just saw a release saying that he has already started drafting up a slew of executive orders that he'll, execute day one when he serves as president next year. So we'll see what those policies are and a lot of this undoing stuff that Donald Trump has done, and we'll see what the impacts that has on the country. But I'll say, like you said, this has been a historic election so far. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that we have the first female vice president elect, soon to be vice president Kamala Harris. I think that is a very historic moment. Once again, wasn't a biggest fan of hers, but you cannot miss that this is a historic moment. This means a lot, especially to a lot of females, a lot of women and little girls who are looking up and saying that the presidency is officially something that's on the table for me. It's something that you hear growing up saying, you can be anything, but then there's some barriers that still have yet to be broken. And getting into the executive office of the president has been one for females. So it's very important. I think it's a tremendous thing to have that another level of diversity. She's also will be the first minority vice president. And I think those are shattering a lot of much needed barriers. I think the more often we see people of color and women in these higher positions, the less of a shocker it will be, and more of a sense of normalcy. And I think that's good for the country. I think that's something that kind of needed to happen, and I am glad to see that. We'll see. I honestly think, Troy, that Kamala will have a big play in this administration, a big role. It won't be a minor role. I think it will be a very active role. I think a lot of people suspect that. So I'm also looking to see what she does and what she says in this.
I believe she'll absolutely have a huge role, primarily because Joe Biden's going to be both the oldest serving and the oldest inaugurated president in the history of his nation. I believe he's 77. I think he'll be 78 before the year's over. Or he already turned 70. Okay,
he's 78.
That being said, yeah. 4 years from now, 72 to 81 to 82 years old. I believe no matter what happens, and I wish great health and much success to Biden, I don't think he'll run again at that age, and I believe he will pass it over to Kamala Harris. I don't think he will seek a second term. I think he will support her and pushing forward. So as a result, I really think there's going to be a lot of work done to set her up for that. Whereas normally a president is trying to, make maneuvers and ensure they can win re-election. Whereas I believe he's really going to be pushing her so that she is prepared and capable and has a resume other than just literally being vice president, but has a public PR face to push for taking over and continuing on their combined administration. I really do believe it'll be a combined administration. And in his age, I believe he's going to lean on her for a lot of those things to be more active than possibly we've ever seen the vice president in history. So I really believe 2024 will be Kamala Harris leading that ticket with Joe Biden stepping aside at that age. I would be shocked, to see him running at that age. And when we touched on it a bit earlier, Donald Trump's not going to go away. Donald Trump has an absolute stranglehold on the Republican Party. So while a lot of us, we say Republicans and we're talking about Donald Trump, the Republican Party was there before Donald Trump and they'll be there after Donald Trump. But he has inspired an almost cult-like following. Somebody made a comment on one of my posts, and they're right, though. I didn't think about this. Well, it's just as I can say that everything was easy for the Democrats to win this election because essentially all of Earth stood against Donald Trump, with the exception of his most fervent supporters and those who just will not give up the idea of just handing over the White House to the other party. The reality is Donald Trump has inspired people to such a degree that they will believe and cling to every word he says. And in the words of this poster, they will crawl through broken glass and lava to vote for this man. Like they will go above and beyond for this man. It's what makes his word so powerful and why it's so dangerous when he pushes out these baseless claims. Because there are Republicans, again, in every poll room, counting all the ballots. They hold the leadership in these states, and Donald Trump's still losing. We can't speak enough on how many things backfired for Donald Trump from a campaign strategy standpoint. This man turned against John McCain and wouldn't let up, even as he was dying. And as a result, he's lost Arizona. Donald Trump talks trash about Detroit and how bad it is and loses Michigan. It's the largest city there. The governor of Michigan had, liberate Michigan is what he tweeted. People were arrested and are being charged with trying to kidnap the governor. He couldn't even come out and defend her. Couldn't come out and say that's, unreasonable. Let's not go that far, guys. Let's be reasonable or sensible. And he's had so many of us, we chronicled it in one of our past pods, so many people of Republicans who stood up, spoke out, hundreds of them, prominent Republicans that worked for former presidents, and many who've held administration positions in his own administration, resigned and said, I can't do this anymore. This man is dangerous. This man seeks to divide. So for those out there who don't think he's being divisive and think this started before Donald Trump, people that he chose, Republicans, lifelong conservatives, are saying that this man is divisive. Former President George W. Bush, we know the elder Bush, before he passed, stood against this president. So many people came together to elect Joe Biden. And probably the most important thing he mentioned, Joe Biden talked about the coalition he put together. Old, young, gay and straight, male, female, trans. So many people come together. But the last one he served was at his lowest campaign point. The African American community came through for him. He banged on that podium. And that's very true. South Carolina, the black people came together and chose him and essentially picked him to lead the party. And Kamala Harris right there at his side. And black people showed up in Philly. They showed up in Detroit. They showed up in Atlanta. They showed up everywhere for a Joe Biden presidency. So I really hope he keeps that and understands that. And really, we will see that reflected in his policy and leadership. But the reality is Donald Trump, while seeking photo ops and lip service, the man was disparaging black cities. And if we think about the cities he named, the corruption in Philadelphia, corruption in Detroit, these are black cities that he crapped on. He visited Minnesota, and I believe he made the comment, if Minnesota, if I don't win here, I'm never coming back. The flippant disregard he has for the people, and yet he still has a fervent following. You're attacking McCain in what is a critical state, and now you're going to lose it. Assaulting Georgia and the mayor of Atlanta and the congressman that came out of the area, like John Lewis, who passed away, a civil rights giant. This man didn't even pretend. He didn't even try, and he lost all of these places. And it's unbelievable to a degree that he still got 70 million votes. Like, when we sit here and we talk and we say, and I don't like inflammatory language. I really don't. And we say white people did. White people voted for Donald Trump and this and the third. The reality is white people voted for Joe Biden and white people voted for Donald Trump. Those numbers are very close and those numbers are very stark at the same time. But the reality is we're a divided nation. We're divided politically in the idea of how we wish to see the nation govern. And we're divided on simple social norms and culture and things that we don't want to hear each other. We don't want to listen to each other. And all we do is want to yell or scream. People were arrested, I believe, outside the Philadelphia Convention Center where they were counting votes with weapons in a Hummer, planning attacks. We have people walking. There's nothing wrong with being armed. I damn sure support the Second Amendment. but we have people who are getting arrested for plotting, violence, and outbreaks of destruction. We cannot continue that way as a nation. So for all those out there, I truly wish that, Trump lost. He's going away for now, you know, and the memes are darn sure going to keep coming. Many of them are hilarious, but we cannot continue this divisive position where we don't care what our opponents are saying. We don't care why and how they voted for Trump. People want to unfriend one another. The reality is, if you continue down that path, that only leads to, at the very end of that path, is war, violence over where direction we'll take our country. And you don't have to be best friends with. You don't have to, you don't even have to modify yourself to worry about their feelings. But if we lose that empathy for one another as Americans, then I don't know where that goes other than violence one day.
That's what has a lot of people on edge. I saw that there was a record, I believe 18 million guns sold in the U.S. this year, because people are scared. You hear people throw out the word civil war, and that's not totally unjustified. I hope that we never get to a place like a time and a place where that is on the table. But people are on edge. People are very divisive. You can look online and see in social media of these interactions between people who, and I won't even call them just Republicans. I'll call them Trump supporters and liberals. I don't want to paint all conservatives with a broad brush because it's really not them. It's really the Trump supporters.
I don't want to completely cut you off, but I do want to spit that point out, and they deserve their credit. There are Republicans that stood up for the country over the party, and they voted for Joe Biden. So when we say, you're absolutely right about that. Before you wrap it all up, I want to thank those people along with everyone else that put together a coalition to get us back to what we call normalcy. And we don't want to we don't want to blow the system up because we lost. You don't want taking your ball and go home is what kids do in the court. But this is the country. And the country was here before all of us were born, and they'll be here after we're all gone. And we have to move forward. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
But yeah, like I was saying, it's these Trump supporters. They're the ones. The diehard ones, the ones who refuse to wear the mask, the ones who are espousing to this QAnon conspiracy theory that think that all liberals are the liberal elites have a child sex trafficking ring. Trump is trying to stop it. Reminds you of Pizzagate that happened a few years back in D.C., where an armed man came to a pizza shop because there was a conspiracy theory on the internet that they were holding child sex traffic was going on in the basement there, and he goes there with an armed assault rifle, shoots a round in the air in the building, and demands for the children release. But there is no basement even in that establishment. Right, you see how these conspiracy theories and how these things can really, inspire people to commit heinous acts and think some of the deepest, darkest thoughts. We really want to be clear when we're talking about these people. We're really talking about those die-hard Trump supporters who subscribe to this notion, who want to see the U.S. go back to the good old yesteryear, where they felt a sense of superiority against every other race, creed, and ethnicity that makes up this country. So going forward, I think that has to be a united thing that Democrats and Republicans work to abolish, to get rid of that, or at least rebury that deep-seated hatred, because it's always been there, Troy. It's always been there. Donald Trump just gave them a license to let it out, but it's always been there. So we have to figure out a way to get back to civility, like you said, and we're hoping that Biden can be the right man for the job. So we'll have to wait and see. But I just want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of Upon Further Review. Please make sure you like and rate and share this podcast. We really appreciate it. And as things continue to unfold, we'll be sure to have another episode on with our analysis and our thoughts on the matter at hand. So thanks again.